Okay, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you are on MisplacedStraws.com, where music comes to life. And for more than 30 years, my guest today has been known as just one of the great voices in hard rock, whether it's fronting his classic band Stryper, his work with George Lynch, or his prolific solo career. Michael Sweet just always seems to be working. He's about to put out his latest solo record, 10, and is taking some time today to talk about it. So welcome, Michael Sweet.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And let's start with the new record, 10. The first thing that jumps out is just this stunning array of guests you have on it. Every track has an amazing guest guitar player. How did you bring all these guys together?
Well, most of the guys that are performing on the album are friends of mine. And, I've met them either in person or over or through Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, social media. And we've just become friends, and stayed in touch. I admire their talents and their performances and their abilities. And they admire mine, and they've seen Stryper perform, and they're Stryper fans, most of them. And it just worked out that way. I reached out to these guys once I started going down this path of having a different player on every song. I started reaching out to them, and it just all lined up so easily. And, I look back on it, and I'm pretty amazed at how simple it was. It really wasn't a complicated task at all. The only thing that got a little complicated was just getting some of the tracks last minute, like day of mix. That was a little bit of a nerve-wracking moment. But other than that, everything came in great, everything sounded great, everything worked great.
And is there any guitarist in particular left that you wanted to work with on this project but just couldn't get the timing down that, you're looking forward to for another project?
Well, there's a few. I reached out to Michael Anthony to play bass on a track, and he was actually excited about it and willing to do it and ready to do it, but he was tied up with the new project with Sammy Hagar, so that didn't work out. And that's the thing. It's tricky, when you're reaching out to guys of this caliber, it's hard to make the schedules align. Right. And then I also reached out to Nuno Bentoncourt, and he basically I didn't send the lead vocal out with the music bed, so no one had the lead vocal, and I think that threw Nuno a little bit. Not having the lead vocal, he's one of those guys that probably relies heavily on the lead vocal to know what to do. So he wasn't sure really what to do with what I sent him, so I wound up sending the song to Howie Simon instead. That was the track Forgive, Forget, which I think would have been perfect for Nuno, but, Howie knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm trying to think of other guys that I reached out to. I reached out to Steve Lukather, and I want to get him on a project. And he was really excited about doing it too, but he was touring and his schedule wouldn't permit him to do it. But man, there's a lot of guys that I know that I've become friends with that I admire so much, and I love incorporating that into the solo projects that I do because, it brings different flavors to the meal, and it also showcases how incredibly great they are. Yeah,
and it works well on these songs, that's for sure.
For sure.
And in addition to just guitar players, though, one of the highlights of the record, your duet with Queensryche's Todd La Torre on Son of Man.
Right.
Did you and Todd have a relationship prior to that, or was it just something, you kind of reached out for?
We did. Todd and I hit it off from day one. I mean, he and Michael came to see us when Todd first joined Queensryche. We were performing in Seattle, and they came, and they were there at the show, and I look over and there's Michael Wilton sitting there in the corner booth, and some guy, I didn't know who he was, and we met him after the show, and I realized that was Todd, the new singer for Queensryche. And after we exchanged numbers and we performed together multiple times, we became really close friends. You know, I would consider Todd one of my best friends.
Well, that's great.
You know, I really respect him as a person, and we text each other all the time and talk on the phone quite often. And I just really admire Todd as a singer, as a person, just as a musician. He's a big Stryper fan. He learned all the. He's originally a drummer,
right? And
he learned all the drum parts for all the early Stryper albums, and he's a big fan. He saw us way back in the early days, and you know, I've just really grown to love Todd, and I think he's just a wonderful person.
And your voices together on that track, it's just magic. You guys really fit together well.
Well, you know, there's that contrast, right? You know, like I've got a different style, obviously, and Todd has a different style, but that's what makes it work in a very unique way, you know, and it's very cool. And I knew Todd was the guy to join me on that song without question, the second I was writing that song.
And as far as the songs themselves go on 10, it's exactly what your fans hope for from a Michael Sweet record. It's loud guitars, it's pristine vocals, it's a heavy melodic sound. When you're writing, how do you decide what tracks are going to be for a solo project and what you're going to save for the next Stryper record?
You know, I get asked that question a lot, and the answer is always the same, and it's true. I don't really think about it. You know, so when I'm writing a Stryper album, I'm not thinking like, okay, this has to be for Stryper, and well, this song sounds like it could be a little more solo, so maybe I should put that aside for the next solo album. I never do that.
Do you think
and then you reverse that coin when I'm working on a solo album. If I got a song like Son of Man or Better Part of Me, which could fit on a Stryper album, right?
Oh, easily.
I never thought or think, oh, maybe I should save this for Stryper. Whatever comes out of me in the moment, if I like it and if I feel good about it and I'm tapping my foot, I'm going with that.
And do you think that has to do with just the fact that you're just incredibly prolific? I mean, over the past 5 years, you know, you've had 2 Stryper records, a couple Sweet and Lynch records. This will be your 3rd solo record over that time. So is it just, okay, whatever project I'm working on is going to get the song?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've got this thing, and you know, look, tomorrow I could wake up and not have it. So, you know, I don't ever want to come across like, you know, I can write songs until I die, blah, 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 because, I mean, that's not the case. But for whatever reason, and I say this humbly, over the past 10 years, I've had this never-ending flow of songs and ideas, riffs, melodies, just coming out of me. And I can't really explain it other than I think God's just, you know, blessed me with this ability, especially over the past 10 years. And as long as I have that, I want to keep working on material and get as much out of me as I can. So, you know, the well may dry up someday. I hope to God it doesn't. I pray it doesn't, but, you know, it hasn't in recent times, and I'm very thankful for that.
Well, and it's interesting, too, listening to this new record. I mean, again, 30-plus years and, you know, however many records into your career. And for me, like, I heard a song like Shine on the new record. I think it's one of the best things you've ever written. So even after all this time, not only are you still prolific, but you're still writing high-quality songs, which I think is really something, you know, to be commended.
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm so happy to hear you say that. I appreciate that. That's awesome. You know, again, it's hard to explain why I'm doing that or can do that, and someone else may not be able to. I mean, I've gone through my, you know, the times in my life where it was really tough to write songs and to write good songs, or I wasn't liking anything that was coming out, or it was frustrating, and I'd spend a month on a song, and you know, I've gone through that. You know, now when it's time to write an album, the day I start, it's a song a day. After 11 days, there's 11 songs. And it's done. And I don't think about it, and I go record it and put it out, and people seem to like it, and it seems to work. I don't really think much about it, but man, I've had those times where it was very difficult to do so. But I'm just happy that I'm in a place right now where whatever I'm doing is working, and I'm just going with it and going for it, and I'm so happy to be able to do what I do, and at the best of my abilities. I feel like, I'm at the top of my game right now. I feel like I'm in a really good place. I feel like if this was the 80s all over again, we could go back to 1984, and I could have released the last 3 solo albums.
Oh, yeah.
Or 4 solo albums. Yeah. I think they would have done as well as the Stryper albums.
Oh, definitely.
And that might make some Stryper fans. That might make some Stryper fans go, "What? I can't believe you just said that." But I still think it's true.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk a little bit about that songwriting process. You say a song a day. I mean, are you a music guy first and then match the lyrics up to it, or is it something you kind of do all at once?
I'll tell you the way it works with me. I always come up with the riff first. Okay, that riff from 10. Yeah. I came up with that, and I'm like, I kind of like this. Then I jumped on my computer with Easy Drummer software in it, and I found a loop that felt right to that riff. Mm-hmm. Once I found that loop, I started organizing and creating and piecing together the arrangement of the song with all different types of loops and creating different fills and chord changes and, laying out the structure of the song. Once I did that, I started humming different words for the chorus. I'm giving you 10. That's what I started humming. Not even having lyrics. I started singing that line. I'm like, well, okay, 10, I'm giving you 10. All right, why am I singing that? And it almost seems kind of corny at first. And then I realized an hour later, I'm going to write this song about the 10 Commandments. Mm-hmm. And then I go in that direction. So usually once the music is done, after 2 or 3 hours, I dive into the lyrics. And after a few hours of that, the whole song is complete.
Mm-hmm. And your lyrics and melodies have always intrigued me. And aside from the subject matter, I just think your use of words and phrases always stood out. It wasn't just kind of the traditional, rhyming pattern that you see in rock.
Right.
I always felt that, your phrasing owed a little bit more to, the prog bands than traditional metal bands. Was there some kind of influence there as well?
Well, I can give you the bands that influenced me, literally influenced me. Bands like, I was a huge fan of UFO. Mm-hmm. And before UFO, I was a big fan of Creedence Clearwater Revival. Yep. And then fast forward beyond UFO, and I was a big fan of Van Halen, Journey, mm-hmm. Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Deep Purple, Dio, and Loverboy. I mean, Night Ranger. I mean, this is the stuff that I listened to day in and day out mm-hmm. when I was growing up as a writer, as a musician. I never really listened to prog metal mm-hmm. or prog rock. I mean, I liked Rush. I liked, there were some bands that I listened to, of course, and got into. We used to sit around listening to bands like Gentle Giant, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
And Genesis, and
mm-hmm.
and I really liked that stuff and appreciated that stuff, but that's not what I feel that I
mm-hmm.
cut my teeth on.
Right. And, as far as your singing goes, I mean, your voice sounds just as strong on 10 as it did, 30 plus years ago. After a career of singing in metal bands for all these years, how do you keep your voice at its peak?
Well, I tell you what, being honest, it gets harder and harder.
Mm-hmm.
As we tour and perform, I find that it's more of a struggle. You know, I got sick on the last ground run, and it took me 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks to get over it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was struggling and battling it out every night on stage. Mm-hmm. And I kept thinking to myself, man, I don't want to do this anymore in terms of singing.
Right.
I want to just play guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of struggling with my voice. Let's bring in some young whippersnapper who can sing all this stuff. And I've actually considered that, and people think I'm crazy for considering that.
Yeah.
But, you know, that day may come.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to take care of myself. I try to warm up and sing properly, and I still have a good portion of my voice left, enough so that I can pull off most of the past and pretty much all of the present.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, speaking of the past, you recently finished the touring cycle for Stryper's Goddamn Evil record. And, you know, band, you had some controversy with the former bass player, but what was this last album and tour cycle like, bringing in new blood with Perry Richardson?
Oh, man. I mean, I can't say enough about Perry.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, I love him as a person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Perry's just such a wonderful human being. And I have fun with Perry. You know, Perry makes me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And he brings joy into the room and into the band. And I love his smile. It's contagious. I love his sense of humor. He's just got a great heart and he's such a great guy. And then add to that what an amazing bass player he is and what an amazing vocalist he is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's just a killer singer and a killer bass player. He's got a great look, great attitude, and he's the whole package. So Stryper's very blessed, very fortunate to have him in the band.
Well, you know, it's funny as you mentioned, you know, some of those nights where you feel like you're struggling vocally, you know, a guy like Perry Richardson, that's where he really comes in and helps, because, you know, one of the things he's known for really is that background singing.
Yeah, Perry, absolutely. I mean, Perry helps with a lot of the high notes, and it's a huge help. And then Oz, of course, everybody knows that Oz really helps with that as well and has from day one. And thank God that we have two other singers in the band, you know, because there are nights when I really rely on that, when I'm really struggling. We just did a show with Queensryche, and I was having a tough time, because I was still getting over this bug that I had, and my voice was not at 100%. It wasn't even at probably 70%. And I was having a tough go, and Oz and Perry really stepped up to the plate and helped me, you know, get those notes out and the high notes and bring everything to life. So I'm thankful for that. But, you know, I don't want to be one of those guys that stands on stage that continues to sing and sound like crap.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
The guys that have lost their voice and you're thinking, oh, man, why aren't they stopping? I will not be one of those guys. Before that day comes, I will either bow out or we will hire someone who can come and sing the stuff properly, and I'll play guitar. That's a great thing. See, I play guitar.
Right. Right.
So I've got something else to fall back on.
And some people may not realize that you also spend time as the front man in Boston. And, you know, I talked with Gary Peel a couple months back, and, you know, he was talking about what it's like in the studio with Tom.
Right.
You know, but from your perspective, what was it like fronting that band on stage?
Oh, man. I mean, you know, obviously Boston, that first Boston album changed my life as a musician. And then to fast forward to 2008 and I'm on stage touring with them, it was life-changing. It really was. It was a really difficult time. Everybody knows that my wife was sick, and I was her caretaker, and here I am out there on the road with Boston, and it felt surreal. It felt odd. It felt wrong sometimes. But, you know, she insisted that I do it, and then we had medical bills, and it was a good way for us to pay those medical bills. And you know, to be on stage performing those songs and singing the songs that I grew up on that changed my life was very, very interesting in a very surreal way. But it was just for a season. You know, I realized a few years after that, you know, my place and my priority is with Stryper. Mm-hmm. You know, as big as Boston is and was, I should say was, mm-hmm. as big as Boston was, you know, Stryper is still my priority and still my baby.
Right.
And that's why I left Boston. And you should have seen the turmoil with some people when they heard I left Boston. You know, people were like, "What? Nobody leaves Boston." It's like the mob, you know.
Yeah, one chair.
And how can you leave Boston? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, very easily.
Right.
And it was just a very easy decision for me. So, but man, I had a great time being a part of that, and it's such great memories.
And now that we've seen Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and Journey inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, have you thought at all about Stryper's place, not only as a top-selling band of the era, but arguably as the biggest Christian rock band of all time?
Yeah, you know, I think Stryper deserves a place in there at some point in time, just as much as any other band, as much as Bon Jovi. See, I don't view the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame based on numbers. That's not what, in my opinion, should get you into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What should get you into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is longevity and legacy and, you know, quality.
Right.
It has nothing to do with, they sold 50 million albums instead of 10, or they've packed out arenas, you know, to, you know, 100,000 people instead of 10. That's got nothing to do with it. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think that no matter which of those criteria you're looking at, you know, a band like Stryper checks off all of those boxes. You know, so it'll be interesting to see as time goes on.
Well, that's what I mean, and again, I say that very humbly. Do we deserve to be in there? No, you know, because we're no more special than any other band. But at the same time, flipping that coin, if this band makes it in, then Stryper should make it in. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we've done just as much and put in just as much time and, you know, gone through the school of hard knocks just as long as any other band.
Right. And now 10 comes out next week, mid-October, and will you be hitting the road to do any solo dates?
Absolutely. We're planning it now for next year. I don't know how many, but I want to put together some select city, select date, full band solo shows. And it's got to happen. So we're going to make that happen. And I'm excited about it because I haven't performed with the full band since 2001.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's long overdue.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. 10 will be available everywhere on October 11th, I believe, is the date. Yep, and it can be pre-ordered off of your website. It'll be available on all streaming services, and again, the physical product and packages off of michaelsweet.com. And best of luck with this, and hope we can catch you out on the road next year.
Thank you, my friend. So thankful, and look forward to checking this out when it comes out, and you come see us perform sometime soon, okay?
Definitely will.
Okay, man.
So we'll see you then. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.